7 o'clock in the evening, watching something stupid on TV. I'm zoned out on the sofa when my wife comes in the room and sees me. She says, "Is this behind the music with Leonard Skinner?" And I say, "I don't know, say it's getting late, what you wanna do for dinner?" She says, "I kinda had a big lunch, so I'm not super hungry." I said, "Well, baby, I'm not starving either, but I could eat." She said, "So what do you have in mind?" I said, "I don't know, what about you?" She said, "I don't care." She said, "I don't care if you're hungry, let's eat." I said, "That's what we're gonna do. But first you gotta tell me what it is you're hungry for." And she said, "Let me think what's left in our refrigerator." I said, "Well, there's tuna, I know." She said, "That went better a week ago." I said, "Is the chili okay?" She said, "You finished it yesterday." I hopped up and said, "I don't know, do you want to get something delivered?" And she's like, "Why would I want to eat liver? I don't even like liver." I'm like, "No," I said, "delivered." She's like, "I heard you say liver." I'm like, "I should know what I said." She's like, "Whatever." She's like, "Whatever." And then somebody liver. I wasn't reading the lyrics for a second. Well, I was gonna say something. My cell phone started to ring. Now who could be calling me? Well, I checked my caller ID. It was just cousin Larry calling for the third time today. My wife said, "Let it go to voicemail." I said, "Okay." Where were we? Oh, dinner, right? So what did you want to do? She says, "Why don't you whip up something in the kitchen?" Yeah, I said, "Why don't you?" And then she says, "Baby, can we just go out to dinner, please?" I says, "No." She says, "Yes." I say, "No." She says, I says, "No." I says, "No." She says, "Yes." I says, "No." She says, "Yes." I says, "No." She says, "Yes." Oh, here's your keys. I step a little bit closer. Say, "Okay, where you wanna go?" She says, "How about the Ivy?" I said, "Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't feel like getting all dressed up and eating expensive food." She says, "Olive Garden." I say, "Nah, I'm not in the mood." Hold up. Okay. Back. And Burrito King will make me gassy, there's no doubt. She said, "Just forget about." She said, "Just forget about it." I said, "No." I said, "No, I swear I'm gonna." She says, "Just forget about it." I said, "No, I swear I'm gonna take you out." Then I get it. I said, "No, I swear I'm gonna take you out." Then I get an idea. I say, "I know what we'll do." She says, "What?" I say, "Guess." She says, "What?" I say, "We're going to the drive-thru." So we head out the front door, open the garage door, then I open the car doors, and we get in those car doors, put my key in the ignition, and then I turn it sideways, then we fasten my seatbelt as we pull out the driveway, then we drive to the drive-thru, headed off to the drive-thru. We're approaching the drive-thru, getting close to the drive-thru. Almost there at the drive-thru. Now we're here at the drive-thru. Here in line at the drive-thru. Now we're in the drive-thru. Well, here we are in the drive-thru line. Me and her. Cars in front of us, cars in back of us, all just waiting to order. There's a Mini and a Volvo with its brights on behind me. I lean out the window and scream, "Hey, what you trying to do, blind me?" My wife says, "Maybe we should park. We could just go eat inside." I said, "I'm wearing bunny slippers, so I ain't leaving this ride." No woman on the speaker box is saying, "Can I take an order, please?" I Now a woman on a speaker box is saying, "Can I take your order, please?" I said, "Yes, indeed, you certainly can. We like 2 hamburgers with onions and cheese." Then my wife says, "Baby, hold on, I've changed my mind. I think I'm gonna have a chicken sandwich instead this time." I said, "You always get a cheeseburger." She says, "That's not what I'm hungry for." I put my head in my hands and scream, "I don't know who you are anymore." The voice of the speaker says, "I don't have all day." I said, "Then take a order and we'll be on our way. I wanna get a chicken sandwich and I want a cheeseburger too." She's like, "You want onions on that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I already said that I do. Plus we need curly fries and don't you dare forget it. And 2 medium root beers. Nope. Just one, we'll split it." Then I said, "I'm guessing that you're probably not too bright. So to read me back my order, let's make sure you got it right." She says, "1, you want a chicken sandwich. 2, you want a cheeseburger. 3, curly fries and a large root beer." Stop, don't go no further. I never order a large root beer. I said medium, not large. Then she says, "We're having a special live supersize you at no charge." Oh, pause. It's 11:40 p.m., but I feel like I can see the sunrise about to happen. Isn't that crazy? Like, isn't it supposed to be like actually dark right now? It's dark in my room, but it's not. Doesn't feel like it's fully dark outside. I don't know, maybe it's just the Times Square effect. I go to Times Square too much. Oh my god. Where am I? This is what I was specializing besides you at no charge. Oh. That's all I could say was, "Oh." She says, "Now there's something else that I really think you should know. You can have unlimited refills for just a quarter more." I said, "Great." Except we're in the drive-thru. So what would I want that for? Then she says, "Wait a minute. Your voice sounds so familiar. Hey, is this Paul?" My wife is all like, "No, that ain't Paul." Now tell me, who's this Paul? She says, "Oh, it's just some guy who goes to school with me. I sat behind him last year and I copied off of him in geometry." I said, "I know a guy named Paul. He used to be my plumber. He was prematurely born and he moved to Pittsburgh last summer. He also had bladder problems and a really bad infection on his toe." And she says, "Mister, please, you can stop right there. That's way more than I needed to know." And then we both went quiet and things got real intense. Then she says, "Next window, please, I'll be $5.82. So we used to head in line, moving painfully slow. I got a little bored, so I turned on the radio. Click, click, turned it off because my wife was getting a headache. So we both just sat there quietly for her sake. Then I looked at her, and she looked back at me, and she looked back at me, and she looked back at me. And I said, I think you have something in your teeth." She turned away from me, and then turned back and said that I get it. And I said, "Yeah, well, I mean, most of it. But hey, don't sweat it." Then she said, "How about now?" I said, "Yeah, almost. There's still a little bit there, but don't worry. It's probably just a piece of toast now at the pay window, or whatever you call it." Put my hand in my pocket. I can't believe there's no wallet. And the lady at the window's like, well, that'll be $5.82. I turn around to my wife and say, "How much have you got on you?" She just rolls her eyes and says, I'll pay for this, I guess. So she reaches into her purse and busts out the American Express. I hand it to the lady, and she says, oh dear, it's gotta be cash only. We don't take credit cards here. I took back the card and said, gee, really, well, that sucks. And that's when I found out my wife was only carrying $3. I said, I thought you were gonna hit the ATM today. She says, I never got around to it. Where's your wallet anyway? And I said, never mind. Just help me to find some change. Nothing with it. Another lady at the windows looking at me kinda strange. Do you know how Finn Wolfhard looked in his audition for Stranger Things? I know, like, it's only the clip that us audience have ever been shown of his audition for Stranger Things, but that's how I feel right now. One of the producers, like Matt or Ron Trout, one of the producers for Stranger Things was like, "Oh yeah, Finn was really sick when he recorded it." Whatever. Here we go. And she says, oh dear, it's gotta be cash only. We don't take credit cards here. Look back the card and says, you really realize that. I found out my wife's only carrying $3. I said, I thought you were gonna hit the ATM today. She says, I never got around to it. So it's your wallet anyway. I said, never mind. Just help me to find some change. Another lady at the windows looking at me kind of strange. And she says, Mr. Please, we gotta move this line along. I said, now hold a steak and horse this lady who won't belong. Close the other side of close up. I took the nut in my feet. I found a nickel in an ashtray and a couple pennies and a dime and a sweet cinnamon piece. Put them over in a little pile. All the coins of every toy. When he goes in up his head, it's all about another time. And now my woman got this skin lump frozen on her face. She screams, you know, why ain't even really hungry in the first place? And so I turned around to the cashier again. I shrugged and said, okay, forget the sugar. I picked up my change. Picked up my change. Picked up my receipt. I tried to pick a window, but I just can't wait to eat. And now we see this activated kid about 16. Where the door came in, check the system. And he hands me a paper bag. I look him in the eyes, and I say to him, hey Eugene, could I get some ketchup for my fries? Well, he looks at me, and I look at him, and he looks at me, and I look at him, and he looks at me, and I look at him, and he says, I'm sorry. What did you want again? I say ketchup. And he says, oh yeah, that's right. I just spaced out there for a second. I'm really kind of burnt tonight. And then he hands me the ketchup. And I'm finally driving away. And the food is driving me mad with this intoxicating bouquet. I'm starving to death by the time we pull up at the traffic light. I say, baby, give me that burger. I just gotta have a bite. So she reaches in the bag and pulls out the burger. And she hands me the burger. And I pick up the burger. And then I unwrap the paper. I bite into those buns. And I just can't believe it. They forgot the onions.